Welcome everyone to History Gone Wilder, part of Have History Will Travel. I am your host, the Wilder historian, Dr. Lucas Wilder, and after the Battle of Bean Station, James Longstreet's Confederate command wintered in East Tennessee. As Longstreet's cavalry attempted to screen his movements, the Battle of Mossy Creek would erupt near the modern-day city of Jefferson City. Union General and Commander of the Union forces in East Tennessee, John G. Foster, remained at Knoxville, but his troops would place constant pressure on Longstreet's corps while the Confederate soldiers remained in the region. However, it would become difficult for both Longstreet and Foster to supply their troops during the winter months. One soldier commented that the horses that could be found in Knoxville looked like skeletons, as supply routes were difficult to traverse in order to supply the city. Ulysses S. Grant wanted to start invading the Deep South, and the Lincoln administration agreed with him, but they also wanted him to secure East Tennessee. In late December, Grant left Chattanooga to visit Knoxville. He would ride aboard the steamship Lookout, which carried supplies for Knoxville. Longstreet kept most of his forces south of the Holston River, with his cavalry spreading out over the region, gathering supplies and information on where the enemy was located. Union Brigadier General Samuel Sturgis replaced James Shackelford as the commander of Foster's cavalry, so it would be up to Sturgis to keep Longstreet in check and notify Foster as to where Longstreet was. On Christmas Eve, part of Sturgis's cavalry under Colonel Archibald Campbell advanced past the town of Dandridge to Hayes Ferry. There they came into contact with Colonel J.J. Morrison's brigade. A quick fight occurred where one Union artillery piece broke an axle and had to be spiked and abandoned. They fought through the town of Dandridge, where the Union Cavaliers left it to Morrison's men. Longstreet used his cavalry to push back Union encroachments toward his position, and to screen his movements, so that Foster wouldn't know where an attack would come from. Martin and his horsemen did an excellent job for Longstreet's command. After the Battle of Hayes Ferry and Dandridge, the Confederate cavalry concentrated west of Morristown, as Sturgis sent Colonel Oscar LaGrange's brigade south to Dandridge, leaving only Campbell's brigade near Talbot Station in Mossy Creek. On December 29th, Morgan and Armstrong's cavalry, under the command of William T. Martin, advanced toward Mossy Creek, driving in the Union cavalry, but at Mossy Creek, the Union troopers would make a stand. The 2nd Michigan Cavalry and the 1st East Tennessee Cavalry sought to delay their approaching rebels, but the large Confederate attack force forced them to fall back toward some woods in the rear. Eli Lilly's artillery battery, on a hill to their right rear, sent shells hurtling into the Confederate infantry and Southern gunners. An artillery duel erupted, and although Lilly's Union gunners were being hit, they worked their guns effectively, loading the cannons on the backside of a rise and pushing them on the rise to fire. The 9th Pennsylvania Cavalry became so concerned over the artillery shells flying around them and hitting in amongst them that they moved into the woods to their north. More blue troops were arriving on the field as well. The 15th Pennsylvania Cavalry arrived on the Union right. Henry Campbell recalled that all that time the rebel artillery was pouring shot and shell in on us. Without end, their shell burst all around and amongst us in a perfect shower. We had not time to dodge. The boys stood up in that terrible storm of death without a falter. The enemy knew full well that our position was the key to the whole battlefield. Cruz's Georgia Brigade and Armstrong's Cavalry Division made their way down the Morristown Road, attempting to outflank the Union left flank. Sturgis called on reinforcements from wherever they could be had, but could see Armstrong's horsemen approaching from the north, so he pulled back the 1st East Tennessee Cavalry to refuse his battle line to the left. The 2nd Michigan had retreated into some timber, and the 9th Pennsylvania got pulled away to the right. Armstrong dispatched the 3rd Arkansas Cavalry into the timber to engage with the Michiganders. A brutal fight occurred in the woods where the rebels got the upper hand, pushing the 2nd Michigan away. Luckily for Sturgis, his long-awaited reinforcements were arriving. The 118th Ohio Infantry made it to the field and swept northward, driving back the Arkansans. Armstrong wasn't done with the Federals in the woods yet. He sent the 8th Texas and the 8th Tennessee to engage with the Ohioans and drive them out of the woods, but the men from Ohio made a strong stand against the Texans and Tennesseans. To the south, Martin sent Russell's brigade of Alabamians against the Federal right. The Federal soldiers formed a determined battle line to resist Russell's brigade, with the two sides erupting in a deadly firefight. Lilly's battery outside of the woods was holding off Cruz's Georgians with canister, but the Georgians were approaching the Union position. The 118th Ohio saw this movement and disengaged with the Texans and Tennesseans in their front, letting the East Tennesseans to the rear get the Confederates' attention. The Ohioans charged the Georgians, sending them back in haste to their batteries. Lilly's guns were safe for the moment. Martin broke the 7th Alabama away from Russell and ordered them to attack the 118th's flank. The men from Ohio were now in a difficult situation because Cruz was getting his men back in order, and both Cruz and the 7th attacked. The rebels pushed the Ohioans back to the tree line, but that's where they stopped. Lilly turned his guns toward the 7th Alabama and fired triple canister. The 7th Alabama retreated in haste with huge gaps in their line from the flying projectiles. The Alabamians attacked Lilly's position 3 times, and on the 3rd time, they gained a foothold on the railroad track, a little in the rear of Lilly's guns. His prone position and the sharpshooter bullets hitting his gunners forced Lilly to fall back to the rise occupied by the Tennesseans and Michiganders. The 118th Ohio had been fending off numerous assaults by Armstrong's men after being pushed back by Cruz. Colonel James Brownlow of the 1st Tennessee requested permission to charge Armstrong's horsemen. Colonel Campbell was reluctant, but they needed to stall until Union reinforcements made it to the field. Campbell relented and the 1st Tennessee charged the rebel brigade. The brave charge was lethal as it pushed Armstrong's men back into the trees, saving the Union left flank. Meanwhile, LaGrange's brigade, recalled from its expedition to Dandridge, made it to the field and pushed back Russell and Cruz's men. Martin had a decision to make. He could renew his efforts on the Union right, since Armstrong had nearly caved in the left flank. Aside from the charge by the 1st Tennessee, resistance was scarce on that flank now, especially since Lilly's battery retreated from its advanced position. Martin made the decision to fall back. With Union reinforcements, there was no need to waste lives in another assault. Plus, most of his troops were nearly out of ammunition. They counted only 5 rounds per man. They would use those last shots to protect their withdrawal from the field. Estimates vary on the amount of casualties on the Confederate side, but many estimate it to be close to 400, while the Union lost only 109.